This is how I welcome guests to the show. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome, welcome, welcome. You are now tuned in to the TKB Report. I'm your host, K. Langevine, aka Mr. Three Keys, who was birthed from her brother, Dace, the legend. Today's guest is extremely special, extremely talented, extremely motivated. She is an entrepreneur's dream. She is a momtrepreneur. I didn't make that word up. They actually have that in the dictionary, I think. If they don't, I got to check. And if they don't, I'm going to be the one to push it. She's been in business for over 10 years. Or this is her 10-year anniversary. Congratulations on that. Her story is amazing. She's gone from an entrepreneur to a business owner to a franchisor. They got both in the dictionary. I'm trying to be grammatically correct, but I went to school and know, so So she is a beacon of light for young black and brown girls around the world. She is a beacon of hope for everybody who's ever thought about starting their own business. She is the extreme definition of being innovative and creating opportunities for yourself. The list of accolades can go on and on and on. She's been listed as one of the top 100 franchises in the country or the world. She can correct me on either one. And she's not 100, so that means she's above that. It's my honor, it's my pleasure. It's going to be your honor and your pleasure talking about the guests to be a part of this conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show, Miss Kika. I'm going to call her Kika Stretch the Great,
Thank you so much. I think that was one of the best intros I've ever had in my life. So I appreciate that.
Well, listen, I appreciate you being on, and I tried to give the people the, a snapshot of who you are, but just give a brief intro to the people, who you are, where you're from, and so we can get right to it.
I'm from Newark.
Hey.
Yes, Newark, New Jersey, born and raised. Okay. So I trained as a professional dancer. I went to school. I studied dance, like my son, Chef Sage. I went to school. I studied dance. And at the time, I had a young son, Sage, who is now 11. And I was like, should I go back to school or should I open a business? Everybody was like, don't open a business. You're going to fail. You know nothing about business. So I was like, I'll open a business. And so I used my training. I used my training as a dancer, and I created this stretching method that I used on myself to become flexible. And I was like, what if I offered this to the public? So I started with $500. I printed brochures from a home printer, and I just started passing them out, trying to get clients. As soon as I got my first client, he bought a package of sessions, and then it just took off from there. So I started just to create income and be available and present in my son's life so I could control my schedule, but then it turned into a business. So it's been quite a ride. And then 3 years ago, I decided to turn it into a franchise. So now we have 13 locations across the country. I was named the youngest female franchisor. So the franchisor is the person who owns the model, like the person that owns the Chick-fil-A, that owns the McDonald's. So a lot of people don't know what that word is. So I became the youngest female franchisor, one of the only Black female franchisors in the whole country. So then I started questioning why. I figured that out, and I started helping more Black and brown entrepreneurs turn their businesses into franchises. So here we are today.
All right, so I would first like to say, shout out to Sage, but I'm a DJ at heart, so I'm gonna hit that horn.
I love it.
About 30 more times. You know what I mean? So Shout out to Sage. Is he a chef? He wants to be a chef?
He actually got hired to cook twice. Yeah. He's a
Yeah.
lot, and he makes a steak like no other. So
is he a better chef than you?
when I buy steak, he makes it. I don't make steak anymore. After I tasted his, I was like,
All
I'm
right.
not doing that.
So we may have to do another show.
Yes.
But all right, so you said a lot about, who you are and what you represent.
Mm-hmm.
I want to start with you said you were a dancer.
Yes.
That's your background, because one of my first questions were going to be, stretching and whatnot. That's in an athletic field. So,
Yeah.
child slavery. Dace is crazy. But
Wait.
Dace, your brother,
Crazy.
So your athletic background is in dancing. What type of dance were you into?
So I studied everything: ballet, modern, jazz, tap, hip hop, everything.
And at what point, and how important was flexibility in all of those things?
It was very important because I started at 13 years old, which is old. So I had to become as flexible as the competition. So that's why I kind of became obsessed with the whole idea of stretching and like turning my body into something that could compete against others who were doing it their whole lives. So once I did that, I was like, oh, wow, this is pretty cool. And it just opened my mind up to think that I could do this for other people.
So what was your career path before you became this phenom?
So I acted on television, some major television shows. I danced on a few like
Time
shows.
out.
Yeah.
See, we have a segment. We have a segment on the show called "What's in the Cup," sponsored by Solo Cup, the official, backyard boogie Kool-Aid cup. But we also got a segment on the show. I'm waiting for this sponsorship, where it's called flossing. And flossing happens when someone divulges some information that they may not divulge a lot, and they flossing, but it's effortlessly, and they don't even know they flossing. And you just floss. You said you were a part of some TV shows.
Mm-hmm.
Can we just name a few?
Yeah. So my first job was in college. I was in the Manchurian Candidate. I had like a really small. Yeah. Then I did 30 Rock a few times. I acted hand in hand with Tracy Morgan. I did Flight of the Conchords. It was a show on HBO.
Yes, it was. Okay.
Have you watched that?
I'm very familiar with that.
You know,
Continue.
I was on the plane with my son, and it popped up those episodes, and I played the episodes I was in, and he was like tripping out. Like we're on the plane, it was crazy. But yeah, I did that. I did commercials for MTV, all types of stuff. So yeah, I was a serving artist.
I said, mentioned a couple, and she mentioned more than a couple, and the flossing continues. So the whole starving artist bit, right? So you're an actor, you're a thespian who is a former dancer, which is a form of acting and entertainment. And then how does Kika, when is Kika Stretch birthed in the midst of all of that?
So I was acting on 30 Rock with Tracy Morgan, and something happened that made me have this like, and Tina Fey, like she selected me to play the role. It was really cool. But as I was on set with him, I saw how his character, like he's really a smart guy, like he's so smart. And judging by his roles, you would think he didn't know too much, but he was forced to act like that. That was his role in the industry, and it hit me like, wow, if I stay in this industry, I'm gonna always have to play roles that they select for me. And I've always been the type of person to want to do my own thing and be my own person. I never like to follow someone else's lead, never wanted to be a prototype of someone else. So I was like, I don't know if I want to do this the rest of my life. I think this is it for me. Oh, I also, my last audition, I'm sorry, I have to throw this. No, this is so cool. So I don't know if Chef Sage is still there, but I was pregnant with my son. He had to be like, I was like 2 weeks pregnant, and I was flown out to LA to audition for the This Is It tour, Michael Jackson. So that was my last big shebang. And I was like dancing on stage about to pass out. It was like crazy. It was crazy.
Now, did you know you were pregnant, or you
Yeah,
kind of thought you were pregnant,
I
or
knew.
you were
I
a
was
little
like,
bit pregnant, but not a lot of bit pregnant?
a little bit, but I almost passed out. Like
Oh shit.
I couldn't hang. But so that was my last like big thing. But then at that time I was just kind of like, I kind of want more out of life. So that's what made me think about entrepreneurship.
So you mean to tell me that you and Sage had the opportunity to dance on stage with the Michael Jackson?
He was hiding in the audience, so he wasn't actually.
I don't care what you got to say right now. We just gonna go just 30 minutes. Yo,
Yeah,
that's absolutely amazing. And
yeah.
see, it's things like that that I created this show for. And for those of you who are new to the show, Big Cuz all the way out Westchester, I don't know what part of the world you in. You are loved. I love you. More like my big sis. You are this show, for ladies and gentlemen who are just joining the show and it's your first time to the show. This is Tuned In with the TKB Report. I'm your host, Mr. Three Keys, and I created this show to give homage and to give a platform for people like yourself, you know, for individuals like yourself who have amazing stories to tell. But you know, the platforms that most people are on are for like the mega superstars or whatnot. So I wanted to create a platform for people from my home state, mainly Newark, New Jersey. Shout out, I'm from Newark, New Jersey,
Yes.
originally, so that you can tell your stories. And since we are the Garden State, I like to be in a position to give people their flowers while they are alive to
Yeah.
enjoy them. So
Thank
that's why I created this platform for you to tell your amazing story, most of which I don't know, But I'm extremely intrigued thus far. You dancing on stage with Michael Jackson and Young Sage don't even know what that was about.
at all.
So you go through all that. You have this premonition that it's more to life than this. I don't ever want to be typecast. I like moving at my own pace. Like, you have this premonition, and how does stretching come to
Yeah.
to light?
So, right. So at the time, I had no money. So I was like, how am I going to go back to school? If I want to study nutrition, I'm going to have to pay. If I want to do a yoga certification, I'm going to have to pay. I had no money. So I was like, what can I do where I don't have to pay for anything? And I was like, oh, why don't I just make up my own thing? Why don't I just use all the training I got from all that student loan debt? Why don't I just create something that I already know? So I already knew how to stretch. I already had a degree, and I was like, I'll just use that. So I did it that way so I didn't have to pay to get into any other system. So that's literally why I created my own thing. So I didn't have to pay.
So now you creating your own method, right?
Yeah.
Did you have to like trademark that and copyright it and whatnot? Like, how do you come about with naming it Kika Stretch and creating this Kika Stretch? How does that come about?
So I learned a lot of things the hard way, um, everything the hard way. And so I had a name that I was using, and I didn't know. I was like, oh, I'm good, because I started using it. So anybody who tries to use it, I'm good. I won't have to be worried about that. So come to find out, I finally looked on the USPTO website, United States Patent and Trademark Office.
Trademark. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, somebody has my name. So I contacted the owner and I was like, hey, you're using my name. And she was like, why don't we partner? And I was like, oh. So she basically trademarked the name I was using, and she knew the work I was doing, and she knew I reached out to her, and she wanted to partner with me. And so when I told her, no, it's my name, she was like, oh, well, I'm not giving it up. So I paid these lawyers a whole bunch of money just for them to say, initially they were like, oh yeah, we'll figure it out. Then they were like, just change your name. I was like, what? Just change your name. It's not worth it. But because so it goes by who actually registers it first. It doesn't matter if you use it first. So I didn't know that. So it was devastating. I was like, oh my God, how am I going to change all these things? But I changed it. I named it after myself because people are always going to try to steal what you create, but my name's on it. So you'll never be Kika Stretch Studios. You'll never. So I use my name and I trademarked that. So then I just started trademarking everything. Like, oh, this is never happening to me again. So that's how it started.
Yeah. Starting out as a business owner, starting out as an entrepreneur, you find out the hard way that you got to trademark your own name. So there are some other devastating things that took place. So let's get into like your first location.
Yeah.
How that came about, what happened at your first location.
Yeah.
Go ahead and tell that story.
Yeah, so I was in a small space, and then I had to move. The person I was sharing the office with was the realtor, and I started getting clients. Like, a lot of people thought it was a whole joke. Like, people thought what I was doing was funny. It was a joke. They were laughing. Like, what is she doing? That's not going to last. And the whole time I was like, I knew I was onto something, and I just kept going forward. But the realtor I was using a space with was like, I can't renew your lease because you're using the space too much. And I was like, because he thought it was a joke. Like, she's just whatever, fake business. No, it was real. And so I had to move. So I moved to the basement of a restaurant, a Turkish restaurant. It was a nice basement. But in the summer, you would smell curry and onions coming through the vents. And my clients would be smelling this, and I was so embarrassed, but I was like, I don't have a choice. Like, what am I going to do? So I just focused on the experience. I built the business into a 6-figure business in the basement of a restaurant with curry coming through the vents. And at that moment, I was like, I'm onto something. Like, I know I could do more. So I had the courage to rent a storefront. So that's when I went to the storefront. And I was like, if I can make it in the basement of a restaurant, I can make it in a storefront. So I moved. I did. I got the storefront. Then, like, 3 years later, it caught on fire. It was like an electrical fire. And I was I wasn't out of business, but the storefront was closed for 9 months. So, like, Daidisi, my brother, was like, every time my brother calls me, it's something crazy, right? So, sorry, Dees. But the last time he called me, it was like a tragic thing that our family, like, it was grieved over. So when he called me at this time of night, I was like, oh my God. And I was like, what? He's like, come outside. And I was like, what? So I'm thinking it's something else. I thought it was something else. And so I came outside. I was like, what do you need? You need me to protect you? Like, we about to go, like, what do you need? You know what I'm saying? Right. Sure. So he was like, no, your studio's on fire. I was like, what? He's like, it's on fire. So he drove me to my studio. It was on fire. And this guy was next to me, and he was like, I just bought a 10-pack of sessions. And he was like, oh my God, how am I going to stretch now? But at that moment, at that moment, I was like, oh my God, it's not about me anymore. Like, this business is not about me. Like, in business, if you keep going, if you do it right, at some point, it becomes a greater cause than just yourself. So in my head, I was depressed. What am I going to do? But I was like, I have to keep going. So that night, I drove back by the studio at like midnight. I was crying. I was like, what am I going to do? And then I saw a church, and I was like, I'm going to reach out to see if they'll let me use space. They did. So we were in the basement of a church for 9 months. I never closed. I got new clients. Never went out of business. And in that church basement, first of all, I started in the basement. So, it was nothing new to me. But in that basement, that's when I got the New York Times article. It's funny how life happens. So, and that's when it started to blow up in the worst part of my life.
So, do you think there's any correlation with you being in your own space, that catching fire, and then you go to a church and start stretching for the Lord? You think that, New York Times is like, yo, she's stretching for the Lord. And did you give free lessons free sessions to like the parishioners? Were you stretching the nuns? Were you stretching the the priest, like, you know, you stretch it
No.
for the Lord, and New York Times reach out. It might go hand in hand.
Actually, no, I didn't even tell them I was in the basement. I just used like another location. Like, we can meet here, because there was no way I was gonna have pictures in the basement so that's the whole thing. But no, I didn't stretch. There were no nuns. Um People were tripping out. Some people were like, it's crazy how, trauma, people have trauma. We all have trauma, but people were like, I can't stretch here anymore, because it started bringing back bad memories from their childhood. Because at some points, one of the rooms we were in was the kids' nursery for the church. So people are stretching with all these nursery stars and all crazy, like, cribs. And people were like, I can't come back until you open again. I was like, all right. So we lost some people, but we also gained clientele. And there's some people that stretched with me the whole time. They just followed me wherever I went.
So I firmly believe that people buy more into the individual and the story than they do the actual product or service.
Yes.
I'm big on energy, and it seems like your energy. You know, I only met you a couple times, and all through Dace's wedding. Dace is one of my good friends. He's more like a brother.
Yeah.
Like your energy is always like illuminating. So, how important is building relationship with your clientele in terms of business?
Yeah, I mean, it's the most important thing. Um, I go by vibes. I know people, think that's weird, but it saved me a lot of bad situations that I could have
Okay.
gotten in, if I didn't trust my gut. So when it comes to clients, their clients, you can't really, like, you're gonna get what you get. But I
Mm.
just always connect with them and help them feel better about, like, so some people are just really sad, depressed. And so people like that, they nitpick, they find arguments, but I always find reasons to compliment them or make them feel happy. So they reach me on that higher vibration, and then we don't have a problem. When it comes to franchisees, people who buy into my concept, I find people that are mentally happy, help, like people who are like, because it's like a marriage when you have franchisees, and you have to choose people that you get along with. So that's something that I've focused on more and more heavily throughout the years, because I know how important it is.
All right. So this segment right here is, we want to shout out during this segment Architect Studios Gym for your high intensity interval training. That's Architect Studios Gym, located in Montclair, New Jersey, 4 Lackawanna Plaza, Montclair, New Jersey. Architect Studios Gym. You can find them at www.arcst.com, and you can reach out to at 973-233-0300. All right, so you mentioned franchisees, so
Yeah.
you have a business model.
Mm-hmm.
You're doing your thing. Did somebody approach you about that? Do you speak to your mentor? Do you have a mentor? How do you transition from owning one spot in Montclair to,
Yeah.
as you mentioned earlier in the introduction, having multiple locations, becoming a in franchisor in multiple states?
Yeah. So I owned another location. So I owned two locations, and I was going back and forth to both of them. And one day I was so tired on the way to the second location, I pulled into a McDonald's driveway and I took a nap. And then I woke up and then I went to the location. So I was like, I can't do this like on my own. I'm tired. I'm doing too much. And I knew that I saw, this is really I saw a competitor who was like, we're about to franchise. And I was like, oh man, I don't know how I'm going to do this, but I have to be able to compete with them. I have to be another option in the market. So those two things made me say, you know what, I have to franchise. So I did research. I tried to find the best people to help me with the process. I did. And then they just put me on.
Now, you talked about competition, right? Competitors. I had never heard of a stretch studio before meeting you and doing my research. And when I told people, when people saw who I was going to be interviewing, they were like, "Yo, man, I heard about her. Like, she's dope and she's this." And I'm like, "Yo," what? So then I did my research, and I'm like, there are other stretch studios. You know, you
Yeah.
got Motion Stretch, you got
Mm-hmm.
Stretch Relief, you have Stretch Lab, you
Yep.
have Stretched Flat Iron, you got Latistics Stretch Technique. And I'm
Yes.
like, when the hell, where the hell all these people come from? And I'm wondering, did you set that trend, or was that already like a trend? Like you have McDonald's, you got Wendy's, you got In-N-Out Burger, you got Checkers. Like who was there stretch studios before Kika Stretch?
So I was the first stretch studio in the country.
All right, stop right there. Stop right there. Stop right there. Stop right there. Nope. Anybody who knows what segment, like what that is right now, put it in the comments. You know, you were the what?
Yeah, I was the first stretch.
All right, stop right there. Stop right there. Stop right there. All right, so continue.
Yes, thank. Yeah, so I was the first, and then when I got the New York Times article, that's when people started approaching me. That's when people were like, "Oh, this is a thing," and that's when people started opening stretch studios. It's funny because one of my competitors uses my New York Times article to discuss oh, look, stretching is a new thing. So yeah, so I was the first, but if you've watched The Founder, being the first doesn't mean any, like, people don't care if you were the first. So that's why being the first, I'm always able to develop programs that none of them have. I'm always able to think forward, and so we're the leaders in the industry, even though we may not have as many locations. But that's all going to change very soon.
Listen. I did not get a chance to do this, right? But what you just said, I think is very deserving of this right here. Right? And I'm a fool. I'm a fool on this radio. Listen. I'm telling you, when I did the research, I said, first of all, where was she when I was in high school and college, and I needed somebody to stretch me the hell out, you
Yeah.
know? And have you ever been approached by high school teams, college teams, professional teams for your services?
Yeah, so we have a contract with an NFL team that and so we stretch them at their facility. Um, we have some household NBA players now
Yeah.
come to studios, and honestly, one of them was like, I've never felt like this before in my life. And I was like, are you serious? And it's just like so wild to me that we're still able to offer anybody like such a great experience.
I saw Reggie Miller getting stretched, and I'm
Yes,
like, Reggie Miller is one of the greatest ball players of all time. And
yes,
he is tight pulse than a mother. And I'm like, yo, she got Reggie Miller.
yeah.
Now, was that East Coast or West Coast?
West Coast. Yeah.
All right, so we're going to transition right now because this story can go on for like
For
90
days.
days. And I got a million questions, but I can't get to all of them. I'm just
Yeah,
trying to, and people that look at that, and then I got another page going like this,
nice.
and then I got, stuff on the back.
Yeah.
So you, I just want to shout out this segment right here is we're shouting out Black Dream Millionaires. It's a black business network created to showcase black-owned establishments from across the country. To find out more, visit blackdreammillionaires.com. Again, to find out more about this amazing network that has just been created by another female entrepreneur, visit blackdreammillionaires.com. So you start franchising. You start in Jersey, then you trickle down south. So you got in North Carolina, Atlanta. Talk about some other locations that you have.
Yeah. So we have 5 locations in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, 2 in Georgia, one in North Carolina, two in Vegas, and during the pandemic, I opened the one in California. So it's not open yet. The build out is still happening in the process, but I saw it as a great opportunity. Actually, yeah. So that's how we met. That's how Reggie Miller got on, because we were offering sessions out there.
I see somebody in the comments asking about considering Canada. Have you been approached about, or have you considered opening locations across the border,
Yeah.
overseas?
Yes. And so that was the plan, but then COVID happened and there's a lot going on as far as regulations and going into other countries. So now our plan is just to scale aggressively within the United States and quadruple whatever, quadruple, whatever is 15 times more than that,
Yeah.
and just expand hard in the US before we go into other countries.
Now, I would love to do